K2 is a new open source model from China, specifically from a company called Moonshot. They have a new model, and I think this is going to be another DeepSeek moment. So we had DeepSeek, would have been beginning of this year, I think it was, when people realized, oh, the Chinese are making quite good AI models. A lot of people started to use DeepSeek. It was open source, which means the parameters, the weights and the biases were made readily available, so you could deploy it on your own machine if you had a really powerful machine, or you could host it on a cloud server and run it locally. There were a lot of security concerns at the time because there are still suspicions about using Chinese models. However, if you are running it locally, if you're running it on your own server, there is no connection between the copy of the open source model you are running and the origin, the Chinese government or the Chinese company that's made it. So it was a bit of a false flag. And I'm hoping this time with Kimi K2, we can drop that racism basically and realize that the Chinese are putting out some really good models, and they're putting out open source models, which is something the West is not doing. The most recent kind of state-of-the-art model, not even state-of-the-art, but most recent open source would have been GPT-OSS, which is 128 billion parameters coming from ChatGPT creators at OpenAI. And prior to that, we had the Llama models from Meta. But apart from that, the Western companies have pretty much given up on open source, whereas China are forging straight ahead. So now we have Kimi K2 thinking. Kimi, it's okay, first of all, it's free. You can just hop on and use it. It is also open source. There is an ability to upgrade. Let's see. So they have, oh gosh, I have chosen a very strange naming convention. So you can upgrade to Moderato, Allegretto, and Vivace, $200 a month, which gives you access to various different levels. What I do love, they've got this musical theming. Kimi means beautiful, precious, or righteous in Japanese. They also have lots of music references. They have something called OK Computer, one of their modes for building applications. So it's like a vibe coding tool. And I noticed also they're called Moonshot. I think there are references to Dark Side of the Moon from Pink Floyd. So they are music nerds for sure. It is free to use. Recommend go and try it out. There's definitely an iOS app and it's available in the browser. I do not know about Android. Sorry, I'm not sure. So let's have a look at the actual model itself. The big thing here is that it is a 1 trillion parameter model. The number of parameters in the model is basically the number of knobs and dials in your transformer layers that are set during the training phase. Generally, the more parameters you have in your model, the better your model. And there'll be people in the comments being like, actually, it's not that, it's about your tooling and your context. Yes, I understand. But generally, as a whole, the bigger the model, the better the model. And what we've got here is a state-of-the-art model, which is open source and has 1 trillion parameters. We think, and this is a rumor, an estimate, because we do not know for the actual commercial models, we think ChatGPT, GPT-5 has about 1.5 trillion parameters, whereas this has 1 trillion parameters. However, it seems to be beating the state-of-the-art models. So the big news coming from China is that it's not just as good as the state-of-the-art models, it is better. So it is beating GPT-5 and Sonnet 4.5 in humanities last exam. It got 44.9 compared to 41.7 for GPT-5. It is better at agentic search. It is better at coding than GPT-5, not better than Sonnet 4.5. So Sonnet 4.5 is still the ruler. And same with all of the coding benchmarks. It tends to be not quite as good as Sonnet, but better than ChatGPT. And again, this is an open source model. Humanities last exam, though, is where it is absolutely killing it. We do need to always take these benchmarks we need to take benchmark results with a pinch of salt because you can train for the model. So it's really about how the usage is when we get our hands on it, when we start to use it. That's when we know whether it's useful for our workflows. On the benchmarks, it is massacring the closed source models. So what I'm looking at now is from Kimi, or from Moonshot specifically, but Artificial Analysis, who is a third party, have also rated it now as one of their top models. So they've put it at the top for agentic tool use. So it's looking pretty good. I highly recommend you go and try it, play around with it, see if it's good for you. If you are deploying local models, this is going to be the new contender. It is a new DeepSeek. It's a model from China, which is open source, which is absolutely killing it. This is a huge problem for OpenAI, for Anthropic, for Google, for everyone else, because they are raising huge amounts of cash, especially OpenAI, who are aiming at a $1 trillion IPO, which we'll talk about in a moment. They're raising a huge amount of cash and they are promising revenues and profits in the future. When Chinese models like this come along and open source their models and say, here you go, use it, go ahead, deploy it on your own servers, you don't need to pay us for that, here's the model, go nuts. That is a massive threat to the closed sourced businesses. Because if this is better than ChatGPT, why would I be using ChatGPT's API? Why would I be paying ChatGPT when I can use a Chinese open source model? Huge threat to the Western companies, and I think this is part of the strategic play from China. The government backs up these models, the government subsidizes energy costs, training costs, etc., helps them to push forward these models because it does undermine Western models like OpenAI. And increasingly, OpenAI is the center of the American economy, and honestly, wider than that, the kind of Western economy. OpenAI is now sitting at the center, surrounded by all of the other tech companies. And if OpenAI does not deliver, or if its mission is compromised by open source models like Kimi, that's going to be a strategic blow for the Chinese government and China as a whole to hit against America. So it is hotting up, and that's going to be related to the next story, which is government backstops for OpenAI. If OpenAI gets in trouble and needs financial help, the US government will bail them out. We've been here before with Too Big to Fail just less than 20 years ago, and it looks like we might be moving towards that